Amen. All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to day number 22 of the 90-day Bible challenge. Before we get started, let's pray. Father in heaven, I thank you, Lord. I thank you for all you about to do. I thank you for all the people that are watching and that will be watching. May they all be blessed in the name of Yeshua. Amen. All right. So let's mute myself and listen to day 22.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are on day number 22 of our Bible in 90 days, where we read the entire Bible on live stream in 90 days, every day at 2 o'clock. Let me make sure I'm on the right day here. Yeah, we're on the right day. Of course we're on the right day. What are you guys talking about? Welcome to the broadcast. Thank you guys for being here. Go ahead and type something in the chat so I know that you know that I know that you know that we all know that you know that you're here. Let me fix this as well. Oh, that changes. That's why that's a different size. Oh, got it. Okay. All right, we're starting on 1 Samuel chapter 30. My mom read 2 extra chapters. Everyone was like texting me, she's going too far. I'm like, oh, let her cook. She's fine. The less I have to read if she reads more. So she did an amazing job. Thank you to everyone that tuned in. She did an amazing job yesterday. She'll be back on the channel. I know you guys said she's your favorite now and you wish she did it every day. I'll try, but yeah, she did a great job. Okay, chapter 30, here we go. Shout out to my mom. Thanks, Mom, again. Chapter 30, verse 1. New Living Translation. 3 days later, when David and his men arrived home at their town in Ziklag, they found that the Amalekites had made a raid into the Negev and Ziklag. They had crushed Ziklag and burned it to the ground. They had carried off the women and children and everyone else, but without killing anyone. Okay. When David and his men saw the ruins and realized what had happened to their families, they wept until they can weep no more. David's 2 wives, Ahinoam from Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal from Carmel, were among those captured. David was now in great danger because all his men were very bitter about losing their sons and daughters, and they began to talk of stoning him. But David found strength in the Lord his God. Amen. That's where we should be finding our strength. Then he said to Abiathar, the priest, bring me the ephod. So Abiathar brought it. Then David asked the Lord, should I chase after this band of raiders? Will I catch them? And the Lord told him, yes, go after them. You'll surely recover everything that was taken from you. So David and his 600 men set out, and they came to the brook Besor. But 200 of the men were too exhausted to cross the brook, so David continued the pursuit with 400 men. Along the way, they found an Egyptian man in the field and brought him to David. They gave him some bread to eat and water to drink. They also gave him part of a fig cake and 2 clusters of raisins, for he hadn't had anything to eat or drink for 3 days and nights. Before long, his strength returned. To whom do you belong? Where do you come from? David asked. I'm an Egyptian, the slave of an Amalekite, he replied. My master abandoned me 3 days ago because I was sick. We were on our way back from raiding the Kerethites in the Negev, the territory of Judah, and the land of Caleb, and we had just burned Ziklag. Will you lead me to this band of raiders? David asked. The young man said, if you take an oath in God's name that you will not kill me or give me back to my master, then I'll guide you to them. So he led David to them, and they found the Amalekites spread out across the fields, eating and drinking and dancing with joy because of the vast amount of plunder they had taken from the Philistines and the land of Judah. David and his men rushed among them and slaughtered them throughout that night and the entire next day until evening. None of the Amalekites escaped except 400 young men who fled on camels. David got back everything the Amalekites had taken, and he rescued his 2 wives. Nothing was missing, small or great, son or daughter, nor anything else that had been taken. David brought everything back. He also recovered all the flocks and herds, and his men drove them ahead of the other livestock. This plunder belongs to David, they said. Then David returned to the brook Besor and met up with the 200 men who had been left behind because they were too exhausted to go with him. They went out to meet David and his men, and David greeted them joyfully. But some evil troublemakers among David's men said, they didn't go with us, so they can't have any of the plunder we recovered. Give them their wives and children and tell them to be gone. But David said, no, my brothers, don't be selfish with what the Lord has given us. He's kept us safe and helped us defeat the band of raiders that attacked us. Who will listen when you talk like this? We share and share alike, those who go to battle and those who guard the equipment. From then on, David made this decree and regulation for Israel, and it still followed today. When he arrived at Ziklag, David sent part of the plunder to the elders of Judah, who were his friends. Here is a present for you, taken from the Lord's enemies, he said. The gifts were sent to the people of the following towns David had visited: Bethel, Ramoth Negev, Jadar, Arier, Sifmoth, Eshtemoa, Rakel, the towns of the Jerahmeelites, the towns of the Kenites, Hormah, Borashan, Othek, Hebron, and all the other places David and his men visited. Chapter 31, the death of Saul. Now the Philistines attacked Israel, and the men of Israel fled before them. Many were slaughtered on the slopes of Mount Gilboa. The Philistines closed in on Saul and his sons, and they killed 3 of his sons, Jonathan, Abinadab, and Malchishua. That's my boy Malchishua, of course. The fighting grew very fierce around Saul, and the Philistine archers caught up with him and wounded him severely. Saul groaned. Saul groaned. Why can't I say that word? He groaned to his armor bearer. Take your sword and kill me before these pagan Philistines come to run through and taunt and torture me. But his armor bearer was afraid and would not do it. So Saul took his own sword and fell on it. When his armor bearer realized that Saul was dead, he fell on his sword and died beside the king. So Saul, his 3 sons, his armor bearer, and his troops all died together that same day. When the Israelites on the other side of Jezreel Valley and beyond the Jordan saw that the Israelite army had fled and that Saul and his sons were dead, they abandoned their towns and fled. So the Philistines moved in and occupied their towns. The next day, when the Philistines went out to strip the dead, they found the bodies of Saul and his 3 sons on Mount Gilboa. So they cut off Saul's head and stripped him of his armor. Then they proclaimed the good news of Saul's death in their pagan temple and to the people throughout the land of Philistia. They placed his armor at the temple of the Ashtoreths, and they fastened his body to the wall of the city of Bethshan. But when the people of Jabesh Gilead heard what the Philistines had done to Saul, all their mighty warriors traveled through the night to Bethshan and took the bodies of Saul and his sons down from the wall. They brought them to Jabesh, where they burned the bodies. Then they took their bones and buried them beneath the tamarisk tree at Jabesh, and they fasted for 7 days. 2 Samuel, chapter 1. David learns of Saul's death. After the death of Saul, David returned from his victory over the Amalekites and spent 2 days in Ziklag. On the 3rd day, a man arrived from Saul's army camp. He had torn his clothes and put dirt on his head to show that he was mourning. He fell to the ground before David in deep respect. "Where have you come from?" David asked. "I escaped from the Israelite camp," the man replied. "What happened?" David demanded. "Tell me how the battle went." The man replied, "Our entire army fled from battle. The men are dead, and Saul and his son Jonathan are also dead." "How do you know Saul and Jonathan are dead?" David demanded of the young man. The man answered, "I happened to be on Mount Gilboa, and there was Saul leaning on a spear with the enemy chariots and charioteers closing in on him. When he turned and saw me, he cried out for me to come. 'How can I help?' I asked him. He responded, 'Who are you?' 'I'm an Amalekite,' I told him. Then he begged me, 'Come over here and put me out of my misery, for I'm in terrible pain and want to die.' So I killed him," the Amalekite told David, "for I knew he couldn't live. Then I took his crown and his armband, and I brought them here to you, my lord." Remember, Saul lost the anointing for not killing the Amalekite king, and now here he is, killed by an Amalekite, killed by the Amalekites. What is the lesson? Whatever you don't kill, that God says for you to kill, will eventually turn around and kill you. So if God says kill the porn, kill the lust, kill the perversion, kill the anger, kill the jealousy, kill the bitterness, and you don't deal with it, eventually what you don't deal with will end up dealing with you. And Saul would end up dying to an Amalekite who remember, he didn't obey God and kill the Amalekite king. "So I killed him," the Amalekite told David, "for I knew he wouldn't live, and I took his crown." Okay. Verse 11. David and his men tore their clothes in sorrow when they heard the news. They mourned and wept and fasted all day for Saul and his son Jonathan and the Lord's army and the nation of Israel, because they died by the sword that day. Then David said to the young man who had brought the news, "Where are you from?" And he replied, "I'm a foreigner, an Amalekite who lives in your land." "Why are you not afraid to kill the Lord's anointed?" David asked. Then David said to one of his men, "Kill him." So the man thrust his sword into the Amalekite and killed him. "You've condemned yourself," David said, "for you yourself confessed that you killed the Lord's anointed one." Then David composed a funeral song for Saul and Jonathan, and he commanded it to be taught to the people of Judah. It was known as the Song of the Bow, and it was recorded in the book of Jasher. "Your pride and joy, O Israel, lies dead on the hills. Oh, the mighty heroes have fallen. Don't announce the news in Gath. Don't proclaim it in the streets of Ashkelon, or the daughters of the Philistines will rejoice, and the pagans will laugh in triumph. O mountains of Gilboa, let there be no dew or rain upon you, nor fruitful fields producing offerings of grain. For the shield of the mighty heroes was defiled. The shields of Saul will no longer be anointed with oil. The bow of Jonathan was powerful, and the sword of Saul did its mighty work. Then they shed the blood of their enemies and pierced the bodies of the mighty heroes. How beloved and gracious were Saul and Jonathan. They were together in life and in death. They were swifter than eagles and stronger than lions. O woman of Israel, weep for Saul, for he dressed you in luxurious scarlet clothing, in garments decorated with gold. Oh, how the mighty heroes have fallen in battle. Jonathan lies dead on the hills. How I weep for you, my brother Jonathan. Oh, how much I loved you, and your love for me was deep, deeper than the love of women. Oh, how the mighty heroes have fallen. Stripped of their weapons, they lie dead." Chapter 2. David anointed king of Judah. After this, David asked the Lord, should I move back to one of the towns of Judah? Yes, the Lord replied. Then David asked, which town should I go to? To Hebron, the Lord answered. David's two wives were Ahinoam from Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal from Carmel. So David and his wives and his men and their families all moved to Judah, and they settled in the villages near Hebron. Then the men of Judah came to David and anointed him king over the people of Judah. When David heard that the men of Jabesh Gilead had buried Saul, he sent this message: May the Lord bless you for being so loyal to your master Saul and giving him a decent burial. May the Lord be loyal to you in return and reward you with his unfailing love. And I, too, will reward you for what you've done. Now that Saul is dead, I ask you to be my strong and loyal subjects like the people of Judah who have anointed me as their new king. But Abner, son of Ner, the commander of Saul's army, had already gone out to Mahanaim with Saul's son Ishbosheth. There he proclaimed Ishbosheth king over Gilead, Jezreel, Ephraim, Benjamin, the land of the Asherites, and all the rest of Israel. Ishbosheth, Saul's son, was 40 years old when he became king, and he ruled from Mahanaim for 2 years. Meanwhile, the people of Judah remained loyal to David. David made Hebron his capital, and he ruled as king of Judah for 7.5 years. One day, Abner led Ishbosheth, we're just going to call him Ish, led Ish's troops from Mahanaim to Gibeon. About the same time, Joab, son of Zeruiah, led David's troops out and met them at the pool of Gibeon. The two groups sat down, facing each other from opposite sides of the pool. Then Abner suggested to Joab, let's have a few of our warriors fight hand in hand in front of us. All right, Joab agreed. So 12 men were chosen to fight from each side. 12 of Benjamin, representing Ish, son of Saul, and 12 representing David. Each one grabbed his opponent by their hair and thrust his sword in the other side, so all of them died. So this place at Gibeon was known ever since as a field of swords. A fierce battle followed that day, and Abner and the men of Israel were defeated by the forces of David. Joab, Abishai, and Asahel, the three sons of Zeruiah, were among David's forces that day. Asahel would run like a gazelle and begin chasing Abner. He pursued him relentlessly, not stopping for anything. When Abner looked back and saw him coming, he called out, "Is that you, Asahel?" "Yes, it is," he replied. "Go fight someone else," Abner warned. "Take on one of the younger men and strip him of his weapons." But Asahel kept on chasing Abner. Again, Abner shouted, "Get away from here. I don't want to kill you. How could I ever face your brother Joab again?" But Asahel refused to turn back. So Abner thrust the butt end of his spear through Asahel's stomach, and the spear came out through his back. He stumbled to the ground and died there. And everyone who came by the spot stopped and stood still when they saw Asahel laying there. And this is so brutal. Man. When Joab and Abishai found out what had happened, they sent out after Abner. The sun was just going down as they arrived at the hill of Ammah near Giah, along the road to the wilderness of Gibeon. Abner's troops from the tribe of Benjamin regrouped there at the top of the hill to take a stand. Abner shouted down to Joab, "Must we always be killing each other? Don't you realize that bitterness is the only result? When will you call off your men from chasing their Israelite brothers?" Then Joab said, "God only knows what would have happened if you hadn't spoken. We would have chased you all night if necessary." So Joab blew the ram's horn, and his men stopped chasing the troops of Israel. All that night, Abner and his men retreated through the Jordan Valley. They crossed the Jordan River, traveling all through the morning, and didn't stop until they arrived at Mahanaim. Meanwhile, Joab and his men also returned home. Then Joab counted his casualties. He discovered that only 19 men were missing in addition to Asahel. But 360 of Abner's men had been killed, all from the tribe of Benjamin. One second. Excuse me. Can I get a God bless you in the chat? Oh, I got to sneeze. Hold on. Gone. It escaped. Joab and his men took Asahel's body to Bethlehem and buried him there in his father's tomb. Then they traveled all night and reached Hebron at daybreak. Chapter 3. That was the beginning of a long war between those who were loyal to Saul and those that were loyal to David. As time passed, David became stronger and stronger, while Saul's dynasty became weaker and weaker. These are the sons who were born to David in Hebron. The oldest was Amnon, whose mother was Ahinoam from Jezreel. The second was Daniel, whose mother was Abigail, the widow of Nabal from Carmel. The third was Absalom, whose mother was Maacah, the daughter of Talmah, king of Geshur. The fourth was Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith. The fifth was Shephatiah, whose mother was Abital. The sixth was Ithream, whose mother was Eglah, David's wife. These sons were all born to David in Hebron. As the war between the house of Saul and the house of David went on, Abner became a powerful leader among those loyal to Saul. One day, Ishbosheth, Saul's son, accused Abner of sleeping with one of his father's concubines, a woman named Rizpah, daughter of A. Abner was furious. "Am I some Judean dog to be kicked around like this?" he shouted. "After all I've done for you, Father Saul, and his family and friends, by not handing you over to David, is this my reward, that you find fault with me about this woman?" May God strike me and even kill me if I don't do everything I can to help David do what the Lord has promised him. I'm going to take Saul's kingdom and give it to David. I will establish the throne of David over Israel as well as Judah, all the way from Dan in the north to Beersheba in the south. Ishbosheth didn't dare say another word because he was afraid of what Abner might do. Then Abner sent messages to David saying, doesn't the entire land belong to you? Make a solemn pact with me, and I'll help you turn over all of Israel to you. All right, David replied, but I will not negotiate with you unless you bring back my wife Michal, Saul's daughter, when you come. Michal. I don't know. I'm just going to say Michal. David then sent this message to Ishbosheth, Saul's son. Give me back my wife Michal, for I bought her with the lives of 100 Philistines. So Ishbosheth took Michal away from her husband, Palti, son of Laish. Palti followed along behind her as far as Bahurim, weeping as he went. Then Abner told him, go back home. So Palti returned. Meanwhile, Abner had consulted with the elders of Israel for some time now. He told them, you've wanted to make David your king. Now is the time, for the Lord has said, I've chosen David to save my people of Israel from the hands of the Philistines and from all their enemies. Abner also spoke with the men of Benjamin. They had went to Hebron to tell David that the people of Israel and Benjamin had agreed to support him. When Abner and 20 of his men came to Hebron, David entertained them with a great feast. Then Abner said to David, let me go and call an assembly of all of Israel to support my lord the king. They will make a covenant with you to make you their king, and you will rule over everything your heart desires. So David sent Abner safely on his way. But just after David had sent Abner in safety, Joab and some of David's troops returned from a raid, bringing much plunder with them. When Joab arrived, he was told that Abner had been there visiting the king and had been sent away in safety. Joab rushed to the king and demanded, what have you done? What do you mean by letting Abner get away? You know perfectly well that he came to spy on you and find everything out that you're doing. Joab then left David and sent messengers to catch up with Abner, asking him to return. They found him at the well of Sirah and brought him back, though David knew nothing about it. When Abner arrived back at Hebron, Joab took him aside at the gateway as to speak with him privately. But when he stabbed Abner in the stomach and killed him in revenge for killing his brother Asahel. Then David heard about it. He declared, I vow by the Lord that I and my kingdom are forever innocent of this crime against Abner, son of Ner. Joab and his family are the guilty ones. May the family of Joab be cursed in every generation with a man who has open sores or leprosy, or walks on crutches, or dies by the sword, or begs for food. Oh, brutal. So Joab and his brother Abishai killed Abner because of Abner had killed their brother Asahel at the battle of Gibeon. Then David said to Joab and all those who were with him, tear your clothes and put on burlap. Mourn for Abner, and King David himself walked behind the procession to the grave. Then they buried Abner in Hebron, and the king of all the people wept at his graveside. Then the king sang this funeral song for Abner. Should Abner have died? Oh, what in the world? My thing tweaked out, glitched. Should Abner have died as fools die? Your hands were not bound, your feet were not chained. No, you were murdered, the victim of a wicked plot. All the people wept again for Abner. David had refused to eat anything on the day of the funeral, and now everyone begged him to eat. But David made a vow saying, may God strike me dead or even kill me if I eat anything before sundown. This pleased the people very much. In fact, everything the king did pleased them. So everyone in Judah and Israel understood that David was not responsible for Abner's murder. Then King David said to his officials, don't you realize that a great commander has fallen today in Israel? And even though I'm anointed king, these two sons of Zeruiah, Joab and Abishai, are too strong for me to control. So may the Lord repay these evil men for their evil deeds. Chapter 4, the murder of Ishbosheth. Let me make sure that I don't know where we're going today. We are going to chapter 12. Ooh, what a long way to go, ladies and gentlemen. All right, we're halfway there. Chapter 12. Oh, we're only 17 minutes in. When Ishbosheth, Saul's son, heard about Abner's death at Hebron, he lost all courage, and the Israelites became paralyzed with fear. Now there were two brothers, Bana and Rechab, who were captains of Ishbosheth's raiding parties. They were sons of Rimmon, a member of the tribe of Benjamin, who lived in Beeroth. The town of Beeroth is now part of Benjamin's territory, because the original people of Beeroth fled to Gittim, where they still live as foreigners. Saul's son Jonathan had a son named Mephibosheth, who was crippled as a child. Oh, I love this story. So Saul's son, Jonathan, had a son named Mephibosheth, who was crippled as a child. He was 5 years old when the report came from Jezreel that Saul and Jonathan had been killed in battle. When the child's nurses heard the news, they picked him up and fled. But as she hurried away, she dropped him and he became crippled. One day, Rechab and Bana, the sons of Rimmon from Beeroth, went to Ishbosheth's house around noon as he was taking his midday rest. The doorkeeper, who had been sifting wheat, became drowsy and fell asleep. So Rechab and Bana slipped past her. They went into the house and found Ishbosheth sleeping on the bed. They struck him and killed him and cut off his head. Then taking his head with them, they fled across the Jordan Valley through the night. When they arrived at Hebron, they presented Ishbosheth's head to David. Look, they said to David, Here's the head of Ishbosheth, the son of your enemy Saul, who tried to kill you. Today the Lord has given my lord the king revenge on Saul and his entire family." But David said to Rechab and Baanah, "The Lord who saves me from all my enemies is my witness. Someone once told me, 'Saul is dead,' thinking he was bringing me good news. But I seized him and killed him at Ziklag. That's the reward I gave him for his news. How much more shall I reward evil men who have killed an innocent man in his own house and on his own bed?" Come on now, bro. Shouldn't I hold you responsible for his blood and rid the earth of you? So David ordered his young men to kill them, and they did. They cut off their hands and feet and hung their bodies beside the pool in Hebron. Then they took Ishbosheth's head and buried it in Abner's tomb in Hebron. Oh, chapter 5. Chapter 5. Then the tribes of Israel went to David at Hebron and told him, "Where are your flesh and blood? Where are your own flesh and blood? In the past, when Saul was our king, you were the ones who really led the forces of Israel. And the Lord told you, 'You'll be the shepherd of my people of Israel. You'll be Israel's leader.'" So there at Hebron, the king David made a covenant before the Lord with all the elders of Israel, and they anointed him king of Israel. David was 30 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 40 years in all. He had reigned over Judah from Hebron for 7 years and 6 months, and from Jerusalem he reigned over all of Israel and Judah for 33 years. David then led his men to Jerusalem to fight against the Jebusites, the original inhabitants of the land who were living there. The Jebusites taunted David, saying, "You'll never get in here. Even the blind and lame could keep you out." For the Jebusites thought they were safe. But David captured the fortress of Zion, which is now called the city of David. On the day of the attack, David said to his troops, "I hate those lame and blind, dirty rat Jebusites. Whoever attacks them should strike by going into the city through the water tunnel." That is the origin of the saying, "The blind and the lame may not enter the house." So David made the fortress his home, and he called it the city of David. He extended the city, starting at the supporting terraces and working inward. And David became more and more powerful because the Lord of God of heaven's armies was with him. Then King Hiram of Tyre sent messengers to David, along with cedar timber and carpenters and stonemasons, and they built David a palace. And David realized that the Lord had confirmed him as king over Israel, and he blessed his kingdom for the sake of the people of Israel. After moving from Hebron to Jerusalem, David married more concubines and wives, and they had more sons and daughters. These are the names of David's sons who were born in Jerusalem: Shammua, Shobab, Nathan, Solomon, Iber, Elishua, Nepheg, Japhia, Elishama, Eliadah, and Eliphelet. When the Israelites heard that David had been anointed the king of Israel, they mobilized all their forces to capture him. But David was told they were coming, so he went into the stronghold. The Philistines arrived and spread out across the land of Rapha. So David asked the Lord, "Should I go out to fight the Philistines? Will you hand them over to me?" The Lord replied, "Yes, go ahead. I will certainly hand them over to you." So David went to Baal Perazim and defeated the Philistines there. "The Lord did it," David said. "He burst through my enemies like a raging flood." So he named the place Baal Perazim, which means the Lord who burst through. The Philistines had abandoned their idols there, so David and his men confiscated them. But after a while, the Philistines returned and again spread across the valley of Rephaim. And again, David asked the Lord what to do. "Do not attack them straight on," the Lord said. "Instead, circle around the back behind and attack near the poplar trees. When you hear the sound like marching feet in the tops of the poplar trees, be on alert. That will be the signal that the Lord is moving ahead of you to strike down the Philistine army." Ooh, I love that. When you hear the marching feet, that's the Lord moving ahead of you. So David did what the Lord commanded, and he struck down the Philistines on the way from Gibeon to Gezer. Chapter 6. Then David again gathered the elite troops in Israel, 30,000 in all. He led them to Baalah of Judah to bring back the ark of God, which bears the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, who is enthroned between the cherubim. They placed the ark of God on a new cart and brought it from Abinadab's house, which was on a hill. Uzzah and Ahiah, Abinadab's sons, were guiding the cart. They should have never placed it on the cart. That's how the Philistines carried it. It was always supposed to be on the shoulders of the Levites. Sad when we carry the presence of God the same way the world does. Preach, brother. That carried the ark of God. Ahio walked in front of the ark. David and all the people of Israel were celebrating before the Lord, singing songs and playing all kinds of musical instruments: lyres, harps, tambourines, castanets, and cymbals. But when they arrived at the threshing floor of Nacon, the ox stumbled, and Uzzah reached out his hand and steadied the ark of God. Then the Lord's anger was roused against Uzzah, and God struck him dead because of this. So Uzzah died right there beside the ark of God. Remember, you couldn't touch the ark or else you'd die. David was angry because the Lord's anger had bursted out against Uzzah. He named the place Perez Uzzah, which means to burst out against Uzzah, as it's still called today. David was now afraid of the Lord, and he asked, "How can I ever bring the ark of the Lord back into my care?" So David decided not to move the ark of the Lord into the city of David. Instead, he took it to the house of Abinadab of Gath. The ark of the Lord remained there in Abinadab's house for 3 months, and the Lord blessed Abinadab and his entire household. How many of you know if you can get the presence of God at your house, the Lord will bless your house? This should be what we're all striving for, is to get the ark of God, the presence of God in our homes. Then King David was told, "The Lord has blessed Abinadab's household and everything he has because of the ark of God." So David went there and brought the ark of God from the house of Abinadab to the city of David with great celebration. After the men who were carrying the ark of the Lord had gone 6 steps, David sacrificed a bull and fattened calf. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, wearing a priestly garment. So David and all the people of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouts of joy and blowing of ram's horns. But as the ark of the Lord entered the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked down from her window and saw King David leaping and dancing before the Lord. She was filled with contempt for him. They brought the ark of the Lord and set it in its place inside the special tent David had prepared for it. And David sacrificed burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord. When he had finished sacrifices, David blessed the people in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies. Then he gave to every Israelite man and woman in the crowd a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, and a cake of raisins. Then all the people returned to their homes. When David returned home to bless his family, Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet him. She said in disgust, "How a distinguished king of Israel looked today, shamelessly exposing himself to the servant girls like any vulgar person might do." David retorted to Michal, "I was dancing before the Lord, who chose me above your father and his family. He appointed me as the leader of Israel and the people of the Lord, so I celebrate the Lord. Yes, and I'm willing to look even more foolish than this, even humiliated in my own eyes. But those servant girls you mentioned will indeed think I'm distinguished." So Michal, the daughter of Saul, remained childless throughout her entire life. Chapter 7. When King David was settled in the palace and the Lord had given him rest from all the surrounding enemies, the king summoned Nathan the prophet. "Look," David said, "I'm living in a beautiful cedar palace, but the ark of God is out there in a tent." And Nathan replied, "Go ahead and do whatever you have in mind, for the Lord is with you." But that night the Lord said to Nathan, "Go and tell my servant David, this is what the Lord has declared. Are you the one to build a house for me to live in? I've never lived in a house from the day I brought the Israelites out of Egypt until this very day. I've always moved from place to place with a tent and a tabernacle as my dwelling. Yet no matter where I've gone with the Israelites, I've never once complained to Israel's tribal leaders. The shepherds of my people Israel, I've never asked them, why haven't you built me a beautiful cedar house? Now go and say to my servant David, this is what the Lord of heaven's armies has declared. I took you from tending sheep in the pasture and selected you to be the leader of my people of Israel. I've been with you wherever you've gone, and I've destroyed all of your enemies before your eyes. Now I'll make your name as famous as anyone who has ever lived on the earth, and I'll provide a homeland for my people Israel, planting them in a secure place where they've never be disturbed. Evil nations won't oppress them as they've done in the past. Starting from the time I appointed judges to rule my people of Israel, and I'll give you the rest from all your enemies. Furthermore, the Lord declares, they will make a house for you, a dynasty of kings. For when you died and are buried with your ancestors, I will rise up one of your descendants for your own offspring, and I'll make them his kingdom strong. He's the one who will build a house, a temple for my name, and I'll secure his royal throne forever. I will be his father, and he'll be my son. If he sins, I will correct and discipline him with a rod, like any father would do. But my favor will not be taken from him as I take it from Saul, whom I removed from your sight. Your house and your kingdom will continue before me for all time, and your throne will be secure forever. So Nathan went back to David and told him everything the Lord had said in the vision. Then King David went in and sat before the Lord and prayed, Who am I, O sovereign Lord? And what is my family that you have brought me this far? And now, sovereign Lord, in addition to everything else you speak of giving your servant a lasting dynasty, do you deal with everyone this way, O sovereign Lord? What more can I say? You know that your servant is really like. Because of your promise and according to your will, you've done all these things and have made them known to your servant. How great you are, O sovereign Lord. There is no one like you. We've never even heard of another God like you. What other nation on earth is like your people of Israel? What other nation, O God, have you redeemed from slavery to be your own people? You've made a great name for yourself, and you've redeemed your people from Egypt. You performed awesome miracles and drove out the nations and gods that stood in their way. You made Israel your very own people forever, and you, O Lord, became their God. And now, O Lord God, I'm your servant. Do as you've promised concerning me and my family. Confirm it as a promise that you will last forever. And may your name be honored forever so that everyone will say, the Lord of heaven's armies is God of Israel. And may the house of your servant, may the house of your servant David continue before you forever. O Lord of heaven's armies, God of Israel, I've been bold enough to pray this prayer to you because you have revealed all this to your servant, saying, I will build a house for you, a dynasty of kings. For you, O God, O sovereign Lord, your words are truth, and you promised these things to your servant. And now may it please you to bless the house of your servant, so that you may continue forever before you. For you've spoken, and when you grant a blessing to your servant, O sovereign Lord, it's an eternal blessing. Chapter 8. After this, David defeated and subdued the Philistines by conquering Gath, their largest town. David also conquered the land of Moab, and he made the people lie down on the ground in a row, and he measured them off in groups with the length of rope. He measured off 2 groups to be executed for every 1 group to be spared. The Moabites who were spared became David's subjects and paid tribute money. David also destroyed the forces of Hadadezer, son of Rehob, king of Zobah. When Hadadezer marched out to strengthen his control with the Euphrates River, David captured 1,000 chariots, 7,000 charioteers, and 20,000 foot soldiers. He crippled all the chariot horses except enough for 100 chariots. When Armenians from Damascus arrived to help King Hadadezer, David killed 22,000 of them. Then he placed several army garrisons in Damascus, the Armenian capital, and the Armenians made David subjects and paid him tribute money. So the Lord made David victorious wherever he went. David brought the gold shields of Hadadezer's officers to Jerusalem, along with a large amount of bronze from Hadadezer's town of Teba and Beratha. When King Toa of Hamath heard that David had destroyed the entire army of Hadadezer, he sent his son Joram to congratulate King David for a successful campaign. Hadadezer and Toa became enemies and were often at war. Joram presented David with many gifts of silver and gold and bronze. King David dedicated all these gifts to the Lord, as he did with silver and gold from the other nations he had defeated. From Edom, Moab, Ammon, Philistia, and Amalek, from Hadadezer, son of Rehob, king of Zobah. So David became even more famous when he returned from destroying 18,000 Edomites in the Valley of Salt. He placed army garrisons throughout Edom and all the Edomites from David's subject. In fact, the Lord had made David victorious wherever he went. So David reigned over all of Israel and did what was just and right for all his people. Joab, son of Zeruiah, was commander of the army. Jehoshaphat, son of Ahilud, was the royal historian. Zadok, son of Ahitub, and Ahimelech, son of Abiathar, were the priests. Sariah was the court secretary. Beniah was son of Jehodiah, son captain of the bodyguard, and David's son served as priestly ruler. I can't read those. They're too hard to read. Chapter 9. One day David asked, is anyone in Saul's family still alive? Anyone kept that I can show kindness for Jonathan's sake? He summoned a man named Ziba, who had been one of Saul's servants. Are you Ziba? The king asked. Yes, sir, I am, Ziba replied. The king then said, is anyone still alive from Saul's family? If so, I want to show kindness to them. Ziba replied, yes, one of Jonathan's sons is still alive. He is crippled in both feet. Where is he? The king asked. In Lo Debar, Ziba told him, at the home of Machir, son of Ammiel. So David sent for him and brought for Machir's house. His name was Mephibosheth. He was Jonathan's son and Saul's grandson. When he came to David, he bowed low to the ground in deep respect. David said, greetings, Mephibosheth. Mephibosheth replied, I'm your servant. Don't be afraid, David said. I intend to show kindness to you because of my promise for your father, Jonathan. I'll give you all the property that once belonged to your grandfather, Saul, and you'll eat here with me at the king's table. This is like what the Lord does to us. Jesus is David and we're Mephibosheth. We're broken and crippled and hurting, and the Lord brings us to his table. Preach. I preached this once. Mephibosheth bowed respectfully and exclaimed, who is your servant that you'd show such kindness to a dead dog like me? Then the king summoned Saul's servant Ziba and said, I've given your master's grandson everything that belonged to Saul and his family. You and your sons and servants are to farm the land for him and produce food for your master's household. But Mephibosheth, your master's grandson, will eat here at my table. Ziba replied, yes, my lord, the king. I am your servant, and I'll do all that you've commanded. And from that time on, Mephibosheth ate regularly at David's table, like one of the king's sons. Mephibosheth had a young son named Micah. From then on, all the members of Ziba's household were Mephibosheth's servants. And Mephibosheth, who was crippled in both feet, lived in Jerusalem and ate regularly at the king's table. Chapter 10. David defeats the Ammonites. Let me get a drink of water here. Oh, there's nothing like cold water. So good. All right, here we go. We're almost there. Chapter 10. Sometime after this, King Nahash of the Ammonites died, and his son Hanun became king. David said, I'm going to show loyalty to Hanun, just as his father Nahash has always been loyal to me. So David sent ambassadors to express sympathy to Hanun about his father's death. But when David's ambassadors arrived in the land of Ammon, the Ammonite commander said to Hanun, their master, do you really think that these men are coming here to honor your father? No, David had sent them to spy out the city so they can come in and conquer it. So Hanun seized David's ambassadors and shaved off half of each man's beard. He cut off their robes at the buttocks and sent them to David in shame. Then David heard what had happened, and he sent messengers to tell the men, stay at Jericho until your beard grow out, and then come back, for they felt deep shame because of their appearance. When the people of Ammon realized how seriously they had angered David, they hired 20,000 Armenian foot soldiers from the land of Beth Rehob and Zobah, 1,000 from the king of Maacah, and 12,000 from the land of Tob. When David heard about this, he sent Joab and all his warriors to fight them. The Ammonite troops came out and drew up their battle lines at the entrance of the city gate, while the Armenians from Zobah and Rabbab and the men from Tob and Maacah positioned themselves to fight in the open fields. When Joab saw that you have to fight on both sides front and rear, he chose some of Israel's troops and placed them under his personal command to fight the Arameans in the fields. He left the rest of the army under the command of his brother Abishai, who was to attack the Ammonites. If the Arameans are too strong for me, then come over and help me, Joab told his brother. And if the Ammonites are too strong for you, I'll come and help you. Be courageous. Let us fight bravely for our people and the cities of our God. May the Lord's will be done. When Joab and his troops attacked the Arameans, I've been saying that wrong my whole life. The Arameans began to run away. And when the Ammonites saw the Arameans running, they ran from Abishai and retreated into the city. After the battle was over, Joab returned to Jerusalem. The Arameans now realized that they were no match for Israel. So when they regrouped, they were joined by additional Aramean troops summoned by Hadadezer from the other side of the Euphrates River. These troops arrived at Helam under the command of Shobak, the commander of Hadadezer's forces. When David heard what was happening, he mobilized all of Israel, crossed the Jordan River, and led the army to Helam. The Arameans positioned themselves in battle formation and fought against David. But again, the Arameans fled from the Israelites. This time, David's forces killed 700 charioteers and 40,000 foot soldiers, including Shobak, the commander of their army. When all the kings allied with Hadadezer saw that they had been defeated by Israel, they surrendered to Israel and became their subjects. After that, the Arameans were afraid to help the Ammonites. David and Bathsheba. Oh, David's about to get in trouble. David's about to be a little scoundrel here. In the spring of the year, I preached this recently, actually. In the spring of the year, when kings normally go out to war, David sent Joab, an Israelite army, to fight the Ammonites. They destroyed the Ammonite army and laid siege to the city of Rabbah. However, David stayed behind in Jerusalem. So David should have been out fighting, but he's staying back. He's sleeping in. Late one afternoon, after his midday rest, okay, David's getting lazy. David got out of bed and was walking on the roof around the palace. As he looked over the city, he noticed a woman of unusual beauty taking a bath. He sent someone to find out who she was, and he was told, "She's Bathsheba, the daughter of Eliam and the wife of Uriah the Hittite." Then David sent messengers to get her, and she came to the palace, and he slept with her. She had just completed the purification rites after having her menstrual period. Yeah. Then she returned home. Later, when Bathsheba discovered she was pregnant, she sent David a message saying, "I'm pregnant." Then David sent word to Joab, "Send me Uriah the Hittite." So Joab sent him to David. When Uriah arrived, David asked him how Joab and the army were getting along and how the war was progressing. Then he told Uriah, "Go home and relax." David even sent a gift to Uriah after he had left the palace. But Uriah didn't go home. Obviously, David's trying to get him to go home, sleep with his wife, and then they'll think that it's Uriah's baby. He slept at the palace entrance with the king's palace guard. When David heard that Uriah had not gone home, he summoned him and said, "What's the matter? Why didn't you go home last night after being away for so long?" Uriah replied, "The ark and the armies of Israel and Judah are living in tents, and Joab and my master's men are camping in open fields. How can I go home to wine and dine and sleep with my wife? I swear I'll never do such a thing." "Well, stay here today," David told him, "and tomorrow you can return to the army." So Uriah stayed in Jerusalem and that day and next. Then David invited him to dinner and got him drunk. But even then, he couldn't get Uriah to go home with his wife. Again, he slept at the palace entrance with the king's palace guard. So the next morning, David wrote a letter to Joab and gave it to Uriah to deliver. The letter instructed Joab, "Station Uriah on the front lines where the battle is the fiercest. Then pull back so he will be killed." Man, David is so bad here. So Joab assigned Uriah to a spot close to the city wall where he knew the enemy's strongest men were fighting. And when the enemy soldiers came out of the city to fight, Uriah the Hittite was killed along with the other Israelite soldiers. Then Joab sent a battle report to David. He told his messenger, report all the news of the battle to the king. But he might get angry and ask, "Why did the troops go so close to the city? Didn't they know they would be shooting from the walls? Wasn't Abimelech, son of Gideon, killed at the Bez by a woman who threw a millstone down on him from the wall? Why would you get so close to the wall? Then tell him Uriah the Hittite was killed too." So the messenger sent to Jerusalem a complete report to David. "The enemy came out against in the open fields," he said, "and as we chased them back to the city gate, the archers on the wall shot arrows at us, and some of the king's men were killed, including Uriah the Hittite." "Well, tell Joab not to be discouraged," David said. "The sword devours this one today and one tomorrow. Fight harder next time and conquer the city." When Uriah's wife heard that her husband was dead, she mourned for him. When the period of mourning was over, David sent for her and brought her to the palace, and she became one of his wives. Then she gave birth to a son, but the Lord was displeased with what David had done. Oh, naughty boy. David was a scoundrel. All right, last chapter here. I think. Yeah, last chapter. Chapter 12. So the Lord sent Nathan the prophet to tell David this story. All right, everybody listen. There were two men in a certain town. One was rich, one was poor. The rich man owned a great many sheep and cattle, and the poor man owned nothing but one little lamb that he bought. He raised that little lamb and grew up with his children and ate it from the man's own plate and drank from his cup. He cuddled in his arms like a baby daughter. And one day a guest arrived at the home of the rich man, but instead of killing an animal from his own flock, he took the poor man's lamb and killed it and prepared it for his guest. And David was furious. As surely as the Lord lives, he vowed, any man who would do that deserves to die. He must repay 4 lambs to the poor man for the one that he stole for having no pity. Then Nathan said to David, you are that man. Oh! Gave him a story and then said, you're the guy in the story, David. The Lord God of Israel says, I anointed you king of Israel and saved you from the power of Saul. I gave you your master's house and his wives and the kingdoms of Israel and Judah. And if it had not been enough, I would have given you much, much more. Why then have you despised the word of the Lord and done this horrible thing? You've murdered Uriah the Hittite with the sword of the Ammonites and stolen his wife. From this time on, your family will live by the sword because you've despised me by taking Uriah's wife to be your own. This is what the Lord says. Because of what you've done, I will cause your own household to rebel against you. I will give your wives to another man before your eyes, and you'll go to bed with them in a public view. You did it secretly, but I'll make it happen to you openly in the sight of all of Israel. Do not mess with the Lord. Then David confessed to Nathan, I've sinned against the Lord. Nathan replied, yes, the Lord has forgiven you, and you won't die for this sin. Nevertheless, because you've shown utter contempt for the word of the Lord, by doing this, your child will die. After Nathan returned home, the Lord sent a deadly illness to the child of David and Uriah's wife. David begged God to spare the child, and he went without food and laid on the night all the bare ground. The elders of the household pleaded with him to get up and eat with them, but he refused. Then on the 7th day, the child died. David's advisors were afraid to tell him. He wouldn't listen to the reason while the child was ill. They said, what drastic thing will we do when we tell him the child is dead? When David saw them whispering, he realized what had happened. Is the child dead? He asked. Yes, they replied, he's dead. Then David got up from the ground, washed himself, put on lotions, and changed his clothes. He went to the tabernacle and worshiped the Lord. And after that, he returned to the palace and was served food and ate. His advisors were amazed. We don't understand you, they told him. While the child was living, you wept and refused to eat. But now that the child is dead, you've stopped your mourning and you're eating again. David said, I fasted and wept while the child was alive. For I said, perhaps the Lord will be gracious to me and let the child live. But why should I fast when he's dead? Can I bring him back again? I'll go to him one day, but he cannot return to me. Then David comforted Bathsheba, his wife, and slept with her. She became pregnant and gave birth to a son, and David named him Solomon. The Lord loved that child. And he sent word through Nathan the prophet that they should name him Jedediah, which means beloved of the Lord, as the Lord had commanded. Meanwhile, Joab was fighting against Rabbah, the capital of Ammon, and he captured the royal fortifications. Joab sent messengers to tell David, I fought against Rabbah and captured its water supply. Now bring the rest of the army and capture the city. Otherwise, I'll capture it and get credit for the victory. So David gathered the rest of the army and went to Rabbah, and he fought against it and captured it. David removed the crown from the king's head, and it was placed on his own head. The crown was made of gold and set with gems and weighed 75 pounds. Oh, I almost had the hiccups. David took a vast amount of plunder from the city. He also made slaves of the people of Rabbah and forced them to work with saws, iron picks, and iron axes, and to work in the brick kilns. That is how he dealt with the people of all the Ammonite towns. Then David and all the armies returned to Jerusalem. All right, guys, we did it. Day 22 is down. We are on chapter 13 of 2 Samuel, which we will do tomorrow. And also, guys, tomorrow morning, I will be preaching in Antioch, California. I would love to see you. It starts at 9:30. You can go to my website, isaiahsaldivar.com/schedule. The mods will put it in the chat right now. And you can go see the address, 9:30 a.m. tomorrow, Antioch, California. I would love to see you there. Be praying for me as I preach that the Lord moves as he always does. I love you all so much. Thank you guys for engaging, for being a part of the stream. We're on day 22. We're still going strong. Let's keep plowing. We're not even 1/3 of the way there. We're just going to take it one day at a time, guys. We're not even 1/3 of the way there. But I'm going to get off here because I got a bunch of stuff to get done before I preach. I love you guys so much. I appreciate you guys. Thank you for being here. And I will see you guys tomorrow.
All right, that is it for day 22 of the 90-day Bible challenge. God bless you guys. Thank you for watching. and I will see you tomorrow.